put yourself in the position of our protagonist and imagine that you have a childhood friend. You know her because recently her mother had moved to the apartment next door. As sometimes happens while growing up together, she gradually begins to fall in love with you, but this love has not developed normally, reaching a point of desperation such that she kidnaps you and then do not very innocent things to make you hers. She believes that by doing all this you will love her and you will be together forever. The story begins from the perspective of the protagonist when he was just a child. While he was alone at home, the new neighbor knocks on the door of his house and introduces herself with her daughter. He tells them that her mother is not at home, but when she arrives he will give her the news. She gives him a gift for her mother and he introduces her daughter, who at that time was behind her, without saying a word because she was a little shy. Our protagonist greeted her very kindly, and from then on their friendship began. The years passed and the little girl called Manami grew up by his side. That girl who was extroverted and shy became someone cheerful when he was around. She always went to look for him at home, to walk together to school, go for a walk, talk, or for almost anything. She was always looking for him. She was looking for every excuse to see him. This was so normal that the mother of the protagonist always received her with a huge smile. She always told him that she was in charge of her son and to take care of him so he would not get into any problems. She also sent him hints saying that she wished her son had a girlfriend like her. As time went by, Manami's feelings towards the main character were increasing. When they both reached high school, the main character's house had become a second home for her. She was there every day without fail. At a certain point she began to bring desserts made by her to the protagonist. Only in this month she had brought him desserts 3 times, and this did not displease the protagonist, but it seemed excessive. Once he dared to ask her why she was doing it. She replied that to be a good wife she needed to practice her skills, and that she also likes to imagine that this makes the protagonist's little friend happy to eat her food. The protagonist thinks he misheard her, so he asks her to repeat what she just said, but she changes the subject in embarrassment. The years continued to pass, and although Manami did everything possible to please the protagonist, nothing seemed to work. After graduation, the protagonist began to become independent and left his parents' house. He wanted to live his adult life as soon as possible, and the process moved away from Manami, who had always been his childhood friend. One day he simply disappeared without telling her anything at all. This action was an earthquake for Manami's mental health. One afternoon someone knocked on the door, and when he opened it he found the surprising visit of Manami, who with a huge smile told him that he had kept very well the fact that he was going to move alone. But coincidentally she also had the same plans and ended up moving to the apartment next door. The protagonist did not remember that Manami had planned to live alone after graduation and found it strange that she moved next door to his apartment. Maybe his mother was the one who told him where she lived now, because he had never given her his address and hadn't given her his address for several months. That she lived next to him as in his childhood and adolescence seemed something extremely rare, but the line of thought of the protagonist was interrupted by Manami, who, seeing his silence, enters his house without hesitation and offered to cook for him, saying that a rich childhood dish was not bad. Although he had some suspicions, he thought that Manami was right. She was his friend, and enjoy an evening with friends is always nice, so he stopped suspecting his friend, not knowing that things were going to get worse very fast. The weeks went by and the protagonist noticed that Manami was always looking at him. This was something she used to do sometimes, but now she always does it. While he was thinking about the strange behavior of his friend, he heard someone knocking on his door, and when he opened it he found Manami, who angrily asked him who was the woman who had left his apartment. She asked him if she was his girlfriend. Although the main character, who we now know is called Takeo, did not understand why Manami was so upset, she was almost forcing him to answer, yelling at him and telling him that she would not allow him to be with any woman. He must be with a splendid woman. He told her the truth. The girl who had left his apartment last night was not his girlfriend or even a friend. He had only paid for a girl to spend the night with. He was a man and he was single. I had needs to supply. It wasn't something to be so mad at me for. This answer, more than calming Manami down, made her more upset. She was hysterical. She couldn't believe how he dared to do something like that, having her. She couldn't believe he would hire a dirty girl from the street having her company. She literally lived next door to him. He was pretty and she knew absolutely everything about him. She could make him happy and make him feel much better than any girl, but he preferred to pay for a filthy girl, reproaching him that all this time they know each other she always came on to him. Even being alone he never dared to even lay a finger on her. She tells him again that she can make him feel better than anyone else, that she is his best option. Takeo, hearing all this, doesn't know what to say. She was very upset right now and was afraid of what she could do if he stayed close, so he decided to get her out of his house before things escalated. Maybe it was time to cut their friendship. She was acting more and more possessive when she and he were not and had never been anything. Honestly, he never liked Manami. He could not deny that she was pretty, but maybe because he always had her by his side or because he saw her almost like family, he never saw her with desire. Maybe the best thing would be to stop talking to her for a while, separate a little, but these actions rather than calming the situation were the trigger for the end. After a few days of calm, suddenly Manami began to knock on the door in a desperate way. While she was knocking, she was asking for forgiveness for the attitude she had days ago. She was admitting that she exaggerated and promised that she would not do it again. She was not asking but demanding that he open the door. She knew he was at home, and every second that passed he could hear her getting more and more upset. He could not open the door just hearing her voice asking him to imagine the emotional state she was in. To be honest, he was a little nervous. He had never heard Manami so desperate. But suddenly she stopped. A few minutes passed and he thought she had given up, but then he heard a sound from her balcony, and when he turned around he saw how Manami was sliding the balcony door with an empty look and a creepy smile. Surely she had used the emergency ladder to climb up to her balcony, but that didn't matter now. He quickly tried to calm her down and get her out of his house. But there was a fight. It turns out she was stronger than he thought. In an oversight, she ended up hitting his head, and when he woke up he was in a nightmare. He had ended up tied in a chair by Tsunami, and she was on top of him, telling him that she didn't want to get to this point, but she had left him no other option. She repeated that she only wanted his love. She only wanted to feel his body. She tried to convince him to stop. If she untied him she would forget that all this happened, but she went on and the inevitable happened. Tsunami started to do some innocent things to her. She was enjoying every moment while the protagonist already at this point was shouting at her to stop, but she stubbornly refused, reminding him that she had finally achieved her dream. She had managed to share her love with him. Now she would make sure that he enjoyed it, to make him happy. After all, she knows him better than anyone else. After this she only repeated that she loved him and that she did all this because she loved him. The minutes passed and the protagonist realized that this was not going to stop. Tsunami at this point was another person, an unrequited love that went to the last consequences, but after this it is not known what happened. Manami kidnapped the protagonist, or maybe he forgave her. Maybe he hated her for all his life and moved away from her. We don't know that, since this little story ended here. There are other panels that obviously I can't show here because YouTube will beat the video. Tell me what you think in the comments. Take care, and remember that God is the way, the truth, and the life.